The sheer chill that ran through me wasn't from the drafty hallway of our old Victorian home. It was from the words themselves, hanging in the air like poison. The best gift would be if you just died. My own daughter, Clara, said it to me, not in a fit of teenage angst, but with a flat, cold tone that suggested the sentence was a premeditated calculation. I'd just handed her a bank draft, a piece of paper representing 2 decades of sacrifice, to cover her final semester's tuition and her apartment rent near the University of Chicago. It happened during our strained, mandatory Sunday dinner. The silence that followed her statement was heavy, tasting like burnt sugar and betrayal. I caught my husband, Mark, flinch and look away, his eyes skating nervously across the antique wallpaper. But my younger sister, Lydia, who'd been quiet the whole night, pulled me aside into the kitchen pantry, her hand clamping onto my arm like a vice. Her face was pale, reflecting the panic in her eyes. She didn't whisper about a boyfriend or a bad grade. "It's worse, June," she breathed, her voice tight, a sound like tearing silk. "It's not just the disrespect. They've been hiding this for years. Clara isn't even going to the U of C anymore. She dropped out last spring, and Mark is the one helping her hide it. They're using the money for something else, something big. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you tuning in from? Let me know the first thought that came to your mind when you heard that opening line. I'm June Abbott, and until that night, I was defined by stability. I had just turned 45, but carrying the weight of my family's secrets made me feel ancient. For 20 years, I'd been the owner of The Cozy Corner, a small, independent bookstore in Oak Park, Illinois. My life was predictable. The scent of aging paper, the familiar squeak of the front door, the gentle rhythm of a stable, if not thrilling, marriage. I was a creature of meticulous habit, a lover of history, a relentless saver, a planner who believed in controlling the variables. Mark, a high school history teacher, and I weren't wealthy, but thanks to my careful management and a modest inheritance, we were financially solid. Our entire focus, our only variable, was our daughter, Clara. Clara was my world, my North Star. Her acceptance into a prestigious program at the University of Chicago was the culmination of every late night spent balancing books and every vacation deferred. Every check, every sacrifice, every penny of the trust fund my late mother set up for her was poured into that future. Looking back now, the red flags felt less like warnings and more like neon billboards I'd willfully ignored. The sudden, forced secrecy in conversations between Clara and Mark. A quick whisper followed by an abrupt, "Gotta go," when I entered the room. The way Clara treated my questions about her thesis like tedious intrusions. But the largest, most glaring sign was the missing funds. My mother had established a small trust fund specifically for Clara's college expenses. When I went to review the balance for that final, crucial payment, there was a glaring, unexplained $20,000 withdrawal made months earlier. Mark had been so quick with the explanation, a bank glitch, a timing issue he was handling, and like a fool, blinded by 20 years of marriage, I had let it go. My inner voice, the sensible librarian, was silenced by the trusting wife. Lydia's terrified whisper in the pantry didn't just expose the deception, it scorched the earth beneath my feet. Clara's cruelty, wishing me dead, was a weapon forged from the very money I'd worked so hard to give her. My husband, my partner, was an accomplice in a deep, systematic fraud against me. I felt a cold knot of dread twist into a core of white-hot resolve. The migraine that began to throb behind my eyes was the least of my pain. This wasn't just a breakdown of trust. This was an orchestrated financial robbery by the two people I loved most. That night, after they had both retreated into their separate, deceitful corners of the house, I couldn't sleep. I paced the old oak floors, the creaks under my feet sounding like a metronome counting down to their destruction. The vulnerability was excruciating. I felt hollowed out. but the anger was a powerful, clean fire. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to calculate. The next morning, the silence was the heaviest thing in the house. It was an aggressive silence, demanding I break it. Mark tried the burnt toast ritual again, his hands shaking as he poured coffee, his eyes glued to the fictitious headlines of his newspaper. I said nothing. I just sat and observed him, cataloging the micro-expressions of guilt, the twitch in his jaw, the sweat forming on his brow. The historian was about to become history. My first call was to Maria, my sharp, street-smart paralegal friend. I dumped the entire agonizing story onto her, my voice low and shaking with controlled fury. "June, listen to me," Maria commanded, her voice cutting through the static of my anxiety. "This isn't a family squabble. This is financial fraud and misappropriation of funds from a designated trust. You need hard proof. You need to shield yourself immediately." Maria coached me. While Mark was safely at work teaching the rise and fall of empires, I went through every drawer, every file, every cloud account. I downloaded every joint bank statement and every email related to Clara's tuition. I found 2 smoking guns that made my stomach churn with nausea. A tuition refund receipt from the U of C, dated 7 months prior, and an email thread between Clara and Mark discussing a capital injection for something big downtown. The horror of the realization made me physically cold. They didn't just drop out. They had systematically kept the refund, allowed me to continue funding her, and were using my money to finance a secret project. The betrayal was an architectural masterpiece of malice. I immediately hired a forensic accountant, Mr. Klein, a quiet man whose specialty was finding truth in columns of numbers. 2 days later, his findings were laid bare on his conference table. $85,000 of the trust and my personal savings had been diverted over the last 6 months to an LLC I didn't recognize. The Blue Note. A quick, trembling Google search confirmed it. The Blue Note was a trendy, velvet-roped cocktail bar set to open in Chicago's swanky West Loop. The pictures showed Clara, not in a study hall, but posing with a handsome, bearded man, her business partner, I assumed, in front of the construction site. My life savings, my retirement buffer, my entire peace of mind were being sunk into a vanity project. The $20,000 I'd just handed Clara was the final, devastating piece of capital for their opening. I was an obsolete ATM. My righteous anger galvanized me. I contacted Ms. Patel, a powerhouse attorney who specialized in financial fraud divorce. We didn't waste time with confrontation. We filed divorce papers immediately, citing financial misconduct and fraud. The stakes were everything: my reputation, my stability, and my ability to look myself in the mirror. I wanted my money back, and I wanted them to pay a price that transcended dollars. Lydia was my rock. She helped me clear out my personal effects, setting aside cherished mementos. She reminded me of the annual Oak Park Community Gala, where Mark was set to receive the Community Service Award. It was the perfect stage, a gilded hall full of our community peers. My revenge plan was surgical. Ms. Patel secured a temporary restraining order on all the shared accounts and the LLC, effectively freezing their bar's opening capital. But freezing their money was not enough. I needed to freeze their lives in public shame. I reached out to Clara's partner, Gabe, pretending to be a silent last-minute investor. Gabe, an eager fool unaware he was dealing with stolen funds, was happy to meet. Over a quiet cup of tea, I recorded him detailing the $85,000 capital injection, Mark's silent partner role, and the imminent grand opening. I had everything I needed. My final act before the gala was the most satisfying. I logged into the trust account. The final $20,000 draft was still pending. I didn't just cancel it. I withdrew it, leaving the account with a symbolic balance of $1 single. Then I opened my phone and sent Clara a text, my fingers steady. "The best gift would be if you just died. Payment canceled. Have a wonderful opening night, darling." I deleted the text thread. The final funding for her bar and my financial responsibility to her was over. The Oak Park Community Heritage Gala felt less like a celebration and more like a theatrical trap. I was a vision in my emerald gown, a mask of calm composure concealing a tectonic shift of rage. Mark was preening in his tuxedo, utterly unaware that the ground was about to swallow him whole. Clara was there too, radiant and entitled, looking every bit the ruthless entrepreneur my money had paid for. The moment Mark approached the podium, I nodded almost imperceptibly to Lydia. She was standing near the media table, and in a flash of movement, she swapped the USB drive for the one containing my evidence. Mark adjusted the microphone, his self-satisfied grin wide. He clicked the remote, expecting a portrait of his high school class. Instead, the enormous projection screen behind him blazed with the title, in stark white letters, The Blue Note, A Family Affair. The collective, sharp intake of breath from the crowd was deafening. Mark froze mid-gesture, his smile collapsing into a look of sheer terror. The slides advanced, the U of C tuition refund receipt, the bank transfers, the LLC details, and finally, the damning text exchange. My heart was pounding not with fear, but with a fierce, purifying joy. The room exploded. Whispers became shouts. Mark stumbled back, knocking over the podium water glass. "June, stop it! You lunatic, you can't!" he stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak. I rose slowly, deliberately, and walked to the microphone. The bright stage lights felt wonderful. "I can, Mark, and I have," I stated, my voice clear and steady. I looked out at the familiar faces, the mayor, the school board, the local reporters. "I am June Abbott. You all know me from the Cozy Corner. My husband, Mark, has just accepted an award for service, but his true service for the last year has been to himself and my daughter Clara, in a calculated financial fraud against me, her mother, stealing money intended for her future to fund a cocktail bar." Clara, hysterical, lunged toward the stage, screaming, "You're dead to me, you old witch!" Two security guards, whom Ms. Patel had discreetly organized, gently escorted her out. Mark stood paralyzed, the sudden blinding flash of reporters' cameras etching his face of ruin into Oak Park history. The mayor quickly and publicly announced the revocation of the award. The police, whom Ms. Patel had informed, were already moving toward the back exit. The aftermath was a cleansing fire. Ms. Patel filed the divorce papers, leveraging the financial fraud evidence to secure a massive and immediate settlement in my favor. Mark lost his job, and his retirement assets were decimated due to the fiduciary misconduct. The Blue Note project collapsed into a heap of liens and lawsuits. Gabe backed out, and the IRS began its own scrutiny of the stolen capital. Clara called eventually, not to apologize but to cry and beg for a bailout. I listened, feeling a profound, aching distance. I told her I would fund a community college education, provided she took out a loan for half and worked for the rest. But the trust money, the money she and her father had tried to steal, was gone forever. She chose to cling to her father's victimhood narrative, which was all the closure I needed. I had protected myself. The healing process was slow, but every step was forward. I was no longer just the quiet bookstore owner. I was the woman who drew a line and fought back. I started a new savings account, June's Freedom Fund, for a solo, debt-free trip to Italy. My store, the Cozy Corner, became a symbol of my resilience, and my relationship with Lydia, my true ally, became stronger than ever. The betrayal had nearly killed me, but the fight had resurrected a stronger, more self-assured woman. The best revenge wasn't the legal settlement. It was the realization that I was valuable, not as an ATM, but as a person worthy of trust and respect. I am not dead. I'm thriving, finally living a life that is authentically mine. If this story hit home, hit the like button right now, comment 1 below if you believe June did the right thing, and share this story with a friend who needs to hear about fighting back. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and resilience.